So if you've ever thought about just throwing all the socks away, I've done that. I have literally done that and lived to tell about it. I have been so at the end of my rope with socks before that that's literally the only thing I felt like I could do. Now, of course, we live in Michigan, so we had to start over, right? We need socks here. But I understand that frustration. Clearly, I understand that frustration. The struggle is real. And on the one hand, it feels kind of trivial and silly to talk about socks, but anytime I talk about socks anywhere in my strategy, it always becomes a super engaging conversation. And so I know that for those of you who experience the same struggle, you are like, oh my gosh, what do you have that works? I'm willing to try anything. So that is exactly what we are doing here today. Let's jump in. Well, hey there, I am Jennifer Roskamp, a certified life coach and homeschool mom of 9 who is passionate about helping women just like you embrace the here and now while also being focused on creating the life you actually want. In reality, it's not about thinking life will get so much better or so much easier when you fill in the blank. Let's work on creating a life you love now. So let's dive in and get started on redefining Supermom to be someone who is present, intentional, and content rather than perfect in our homes, in our lives, and in our own skin. Let's get started. This is the Intentional Mom Podcast. All right. So over the years, we've tried a lot of different things to manage socks, right? As our family has grown, there is no shortage of socks, as I'm sure you can imagine. There are socks. I can almost guarantee you that at any given time, if it isn't within a half an hour of when we've had one of our tidies during the day where we've kind of tidied up around the house, there will probably be at least one sock in every single room of my house. Now, in more recent days, that might be because I have this crazy cat who carries around socks and brings them to people as gifts. She thinks she's catching things from outside when she used to bring us gifts on our front porch. That's a whole nother situation, but I have socks all over all the time. And I know that I'm not the only one because like I said, it strikes a very engaging conversation. People are looking for solutions. So I thought I would share, though, some of the more popular things that we've done that we just haven't stuck with. And again, they didn't work for us for one reason or another. So I wanted to share those, and then I'll share where we finally landed. So the first thing that we kind of tried, not the first thing because we've tried many things, but one popular thing that we've tried is those garment bags, and everybody keeps their socks in their own garment bag. There were many reasons why that didn't work well for us. I tried many different styles of garment bags, and for whatever reason, every bag that I had tried, the zipper was problematic. It would get stuck on certain pieces of clothing, and we could overcome that by just washing all of the socks together. But another reason that the garment bags didn't work real well for us is because if anybody ever lost theirs and couldn't find it, then it became where their laundry was kind of in this holding pattern because we couldn't find their garment bag. And in a house that has this many people, like it's not that uncommon for things to go MIA for a little bit. So it was kind of problematic if we needed to wash that person's laundry or they needed to do their laundry and they couldn't find their garment bag. Another reason why the garment bag wasn't the perfect solution for us was because we still needed, in order for it to work, you didn't really want single socks in the garment bag. And so there are many, many times where, for whatever reason, someone doesn't take off their socks together or they don't end up in the same load of laundry. Or again, the pair can't be found when it's time to do that person's laundry. So then the garment bag just kind of loses its effectiveness. So that is something that we tried for a while, but ultimately, those are some of the reasons that it didn't work for us. Another method that we tried is we tried like a bungee cord contraption that kind of kept them all together. And you would wash them that way and you would hang them in your closet that way. And that kind of had the same problems as the garment bag, where it really only was a useful tool for us if you had the match all the time. And again, with 22 feet, there are often it's hard to get socks to pair up. Now, I really logically can't figure out how it is so hard for socks to end up in the same vicinity as the other one does. But again, I don't have to understand it. The reality is that was our reality. It often is the fact, it often ends up being where the pairs are not together. So I can either fight against it and say, this makes no logical sense and continue to just be frustrated by it. Or I can say, you know what, this is just the reality. I don't understand why, but I'm just going to work with it rather than trying to keep, kind of banging my head against the wall, trying to figure out why is it this way? Why is it this way didn't really end up mattering. I just needed a solution that worked better for the socks. And so that one wasn't it for me. Another thing that we tried was just washing all of the socks together and doing a sock load every once in a while. And that did work when our family was smaller and there weren't as many variation in sizes. And again, there wasn't so many people spreading out all over the house and going to this practice and that practice. And so clothes are kind of, some of them are in the car and some of them are in backpacks. And again, it just kind of got to the point where it was too hard to organize everybody like, hey, let's do the socks. It was just, again, it just didn't work well for us. That one I couldn't really ever figure out why, but it certainly didn't make it any less frustrating. And so I kept looking. So this is where we ultimately landed. I'm going to lay out my 10-step process. And before you think, whoa, 10 steps for socks, I promise they're easy. And I have this really whittled down. So yes, it's 10 steps, but don't freak out. Like, they're okay. All right. So the first step in this process is that we wash our socks along with our clothing. We don't worry about segmenting the socks out. We don't worry about looking and making sure that the pair is there. Literally, the dirty laundry collects in the laundry basket, depending on whose it is. And when it's time for that person's laundry to be washed, the socks just go right in with the clothing. Now, one little side note here is, and again, I'll probably do a training sometime in the future on how laundry actually works. But for our laundry system to work, we have found that we can't wash any more than 2 people's clothing together at one time. There are 10 of us living here now, and we have just found that no more than 2 people together really is the secret for us. So know that that's going to be kind of how the socks are limited. It's going to be kind of limited to the socks that 2 people wear from one load to another. But our socks just go in with all the other clothes, just like they're a piece of clothing. So step number 2 is when that load of clothing is done in the dryer, it comes out of the dryer and we dump the laundry out and the socks get pulled out right away. The socks get separated from the clothing. Clothing all goes in one pile, socks go in another. That's step number 2, where they're just segmented. Step number 3 is to pair anything that's obvious, but you don't dwell on that for long. You're literally like looking at it, giving it a once over and saying, is there anything that jumps out at me like, hey, I'm a pair? If so, pair it. If not, most of them won't jump out at you. So just don't stress. Just a quick once over. Is there any pairs you can find? If so, do it. If not, don't worry about it. That's step number 3. Step number 4 is now you've got these 2 segments of your laundry, right? You've got the clothing and you've got the socks. So now the socks literally just get removed. They get put into a holding area where they will remain until we get to step 5. So again, you deal with all the rest of the laundry. Your socks have now been removed from the equation and they are in the holding area. Now, it's really nice if your holding area does have some sort of door or lid where, and you're not looking at it every day. Who wants to look at a pile of socks or a bin of socks or a basket of socks or whatever? Like nobody, right? So you want to choose your holding area wisely, but that's step number 5. They go into the holding area. Step number 6 is when it's time to perform sock duty. This is where the rubber really starts meeting the road here. Now, remember how I said these 10 steps were really no big deal? We've already blazed through the first half of them before we've really gotten into having to do anything with the socks. So, see what I mean? Like there's 10 steps, but it's not overly complicated here. All right, so step number 6 is sock duty. So you can do this in any numbers of ways, and we really do kind of do it in any numbers of ways. The frequency is going to depend on what works for you. It's kind of going to depend on how many different socks everybody has. It's going to depend on how much space you have in your holding area. It's going to depend on the patience level of the people in your family when it comes down to doing sock duty. All of those things are going to play a role in how often. So there isn't really a rule in terms of frequency. There really isn't a rule in terms of frequency in my house either. It's kind of inconsistent, honestly. And of course, you can imagine that it changes with the seasons as well. In the summer, we're not wearing as many socks as we are in the winter. When we're not in the middle of sports seasons, we're not dealing with as many socks either because everybody's just staying at home. So again, there's just less trails and less opportunities for socks to be trailing off somewhere. But step number 6 is performing sock duty. My favorite way, and what I find to be really an effective way of sock duty, is that it goes to the offenders. Here's what I mean by the offenders. So we still have relatively young kids in our house. You know, the teenagers, they want the sleep, right? They want to go to bed early. They're complaining when they can't get to bed as early as they would like. But those younger kids, right? Those ones where there still can be these problematic situations happening at bedtime. Those are the offenders that in my house often end up on sock duty. So if you've got all this extra energy at bedtime when you're supposed to be sleeping, man, you are just the perfect candidate for sock duty. So we haul out all the holding areas of socks, and usually there's more than one offender, right? Usually there's at least two because they egg each other on, unless it's just my house. That's how it works here anyway. So usually I've got two different offenders. And if I only have one, then I only have one. But the offenders start on sock duty. Literally, we're dumping them all out and they are getting to work. So step 7 is to dump them out, right? Remember I said these were teeny tiny steps, I promise. Dumping them out is step number 7, okay? Step number 8 is now you've got this pile of socks, okay? Track with me. We've got this pile of socks in front of the people who are going to be doing it. Now, know that when you've got younger kids, especially, you're going to have to kind of train them how to do this. This system really works, but know that younger kids and even kids to some extent, and even a spouse or another person is going to have to see it in person for you just to rattle off these steps. They might not get it, right? It's just helpful to see it. So know that you might do it with someone, alongside someone, or maybe you'll just have someone watch you the first time. But everybody can pick on it, up on it pretty quickly. So you're going to dump them all out. That's step number 7. Step number 8 is you're going to separate this big pile of socks into different categories. And there are all different types of categories that you might have. But for the most part, you're going to want these to be consistent. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. But you're going to want to choose the same categories every time. So some of the categories might be size of the socks. So for instance, you've got the full socks, you know, the ones that come up your calf. You've also got the no-show socks, right? You've got different color socks, black, white, navy, whatever it might be. You've also got socks that are patterned. You've also, if you've got boys and girls in your house, you've got boy socks and you've got girl socks. You've got socks that belong to adults. You've got socks that belong to little kids, right? There's a lot of, you've got thickness of socks. We always have, again, we live in Michigan, so we have socks that are thick and fuzzy for those winter months. So that is a category as well. So you're going to separate, you want to try to get the sock pile, you want to try to get that divided into as many different categories as needed so that when you look at each of these individual categories, you're not feeling overwhelmed. Then you want to break that category down further. You want to figure out how to break those categories down small enough so that when you look at each one of the categories, you're okay doing it. You're not looking at it thinking, "Ooh, I'm not ready for that. I'm going to have to avoid that." We don't want that, right? We want to be able to look at it and say, "Oh, all right, here, let's do this." So you're going to separate them into categories that are going to be consistent. Maybe every once in a while you might have to throw in a new category. And again, that'll make sense in just a minute. But separate those into the categories. And then really, this is where the rubber meets the road. You're going to get in there and you're going to pair. You're going to find the pairs for each. You're going to work section by section through the socks. You're literally just looking for the pairs now. And you're going to pair as many as you can find. So that's step number 9, maybe step number 8. But you're going to make them into pairs. When you have exhausted your way through all of the categories that you have, and you've paired everything that you have been able to find, Now, here's where these consistent categories come into play. Now, you're going to take what's left in each one of those categories. And by the way, as you're going, we just kind of put the socks all into one big pile. If you want to separate them as you go, you can, even if you're just separating them into perhaps big people and little people or girls and boys. It just makes them perhaps easier to deal with next time or with the next step. But usually we just put it all into a big pile. But you then are, so we've exhausted everything in the categories. There are no pairs to be found. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take what's left, all of those random socks that don't have a pair. And of course, you're looking for holes, that sort of stuff as you go. Why keep the ones nobody's going to wear? And sizing too. If it's time for them to go, there's plenty more to replace that, I promise. And they multiply in the dryer or the washer, I'm not sure. So no worries. If there's not a reason to keep some of these socks, by all means, it's time for them to go. But you're going to take these ones that are left and you're going to combine them into, of course, the paired ones are now out, but you're going to combine these random socks in with all of the categories that you already have stored in plastic bags. That's in your holding area too. So maybe you have black socks and white socks, and you have found all of the pairs in the black socks and the white socks. Well, now you have a little plastic bag, and I think about those bags that you get, from the Walgreens store or maybe the grocery store, those kinds of bags. So you're going to grab the white socks bag, and now you're going to combine your new white socks with what was in the bag, and you're going to pair again. And now you're really going to have maxed out your opportunities to find pairs. When you have the two sections of your white socks together, you've paired them. Now you still have some random pairs left or some random socks left. Now they're going to go in the bag and they're going to sit in your holding area and wait for you to work through all of these steps again next time until you get to the point where, you've exhausted all of the pairs from this particular load of laundry or these particular loads of laundry. I found them all. Now I need to go into my holding area categories and see what I can match up from there. That's what this step is all about. Now, what do we do with the socks? Okay. So you can see now you have effectively paired every single sock, or you have basically said, I don't have the pair for this sock right now, and I'm okay with it. I'm going to tie it up in this little bag and I'm going to put it in this holding area where I'm not going to have to look at it. I'm not going to have to stress about it. I feel no stress at all about the fact that I can't find pairs. I tell you that frustration where you're like, where are all these socks coming from? How are they not ending up in the same load? What is happening? You no longer have to have that whole conversation and heated discussion with yourself because now you just don't care. Because the idea is I'm going to have random socks in this plastic bag that's tied and hidden away, and I'm not going to care about it. And you're not going to care about it. This is really where this system shines, I think. So then the question that I often get asked is, what do I do with the pairs? What do you do with all of the pairs? We've done different things here too. We've had everybody keep them in their own separate area, in their dresser drawer, in their container or bin, in their closet. We've done that before. And it's not that doesn't work well, but we have found really that it works better to have bigger areas that are more centralized for the paired socks to go. So for instance, my older girls, they have their own system. They do their own laundry. I'm not exactly sure what they do with their socks, but if they're following my design, they just have their socks together in a bin in their closet, and these socks are free for these girls to take. Then we have a holding area for 4 boys. Now, our boys are pretty stretched out in age, and so everybody gets a different design. Everybody has a very different size. And so it works okay for us to combine all of their socks together. And when anybody needs a pair of socks, they go to their shared area and they grab a pair of socks out of there. And then my little girls, they have their own little bin of socks as well. So again, their socks are different from each other. And even just by looking at them, you can tell this is the bigger one. This is the smaller pair. So they do pretty well on that as well. These bins are not fancy. In fact, my 4 boys who have their socks all in the paired bin together, it's literally a trash can. It is a brand new trash can that I bought. It fits perfectly. That's how I ended up with that, a trash can, because it was the container that fit perfectly inside the cupboard that I wanted to keep it in. If you've never heard me talk about organization, that perfect fit, ooh, that is just the key to organizing well. And organizing is like my love language, in case you're wondering. It's kind of interesting. I haven't already talked about organization on a larger scale here. That'll probably be coming up soon. But again, no fancy bins. It's a matter of thinking about, again, just a little bit into the organization a minute. It's a matter of thinking about where you're going to store them and what is the best container of sorts with which to contain all of the pairs of socks. And it's a different solution for every one of these holding areas. And it completely depends on where we're keeping them. And by the way, we do keep our little girls' socks. Now they're getting older, so I probably could move from this area, but we've actually got an entertainment center in our living room, and it has doors that are not glass, so you can't see in. So my little girls, their bin of socks has always been in there behind the door because who wants to look at socks? Like we don't. But it's in the living room, it's a central area. And so when these little girls were littler and we were trying to corral everybody to get out the door. I mean, can you imagine mobilizing a family of 11 to get out the door to do just about anything? So you can imagine that sock retrieval, any way that we could simplify that, that was a smart move because again, we want to get outside, we want to get out the door like within the next hour, please. So their socks were kept in the living room, again, behind a closed door so that anybody could grab socks for the girls. The girls could grab socks for themselves. So it's a matter, though, of where you're going to keep these and what you're going to keep them in. Thinking about strategically, where does it make sense for everybody to have theirs? Our boys like things to be handy. They like things to be as easy as possible. And so the sock bin for their pairs is located very near the door. It's located very near the bottom of the steps. And so that accomplishes two things. It makes it really easy for them in two ways. They come downstairs after sleeping tonight or overnight, they're dressed. The bottom of the stairs, they just have to hang a quick left and they can get into the laundry room, and their bin of socks is behind a closed door, behind a cupboard door in there. Real quick, real easy for them to get to. What's the worst is when they get to the bottom of the steps and their socks were way upstairs in their bedroom and they forgot to put them on. And so now they're grumbling about the fact that they've got to go all the way upstairs to get their socks. This is where this more central location became useful for them. So again, it's a real quick and easy place for them to grab their socks. And when they're on their way out the door, again, it needs to be quick. It needs to be easy for them. And the laundry room is located for me right outside my mud room where we come in and out. So again, there's a lot that comes into organization. There's a lot of organization strategy in terms of how this ended up working out for me. But that really is how we ended up with the bins we ended up with the storage locations that we ended up with. But that's how the whole system works inside and out. So now let me tell you why I think this system is what ends up working the best for us. Number one, socks are just a pain, but the only time we really have to deal with socks is just that one time. It's not every time. We're not having the aggravation of trying to find the pairs every time we do a load of laundry, which, as you can imagine, with a family of our size, we're doing laundry every day. So now the socks are only that frustration that one time. Because other than that, we're washing our laundry and we're saying, oh, clothes here. Oh, socks over here. Bye-bye, socks over here. We're not taking care of you right now. That's why this system works. Socks are easy to find and easy to deal with on laundry day. They just sit until we're ready to deal with them. They sit in that holding area. That's reason number one why I think this system works. Reason number two is it's real easy to deal with random socks that end up all over my house. Again, whether they're dragged around by a cat or a kid, it doesn't matter. They make they make all the random socks easier to put somewhere. When you know they're clean or you know they're dirty, you know exactly where to put them. And it doesn't matter if any of these socks make it into if any of these pairs make it into the same load of laundry. Does not matter if their buddy is with them, because we all know we can either try to figure out why the universe is wired in such a way that socks don't get in the laundry in pairs when you wear them both on your feet. Again, we could analyze that all day and get nowhere. Trust me, I know that that's true. But that way we don't have to worry about whether they end up in the same load, because it happens all the time where it doesn't. Another reason that I think this system works is anyone in my family can help. And again, these offenders usually come in twos. And so sometimes we'll make a contest out of it. That becomes real fun. And it gets done real fast. When there's a prize for the person who finds the most pairs the quickest, Again, we have to make sure that there's not too much competition there. Certain kids can't do that game, but most times we can do that. But anyone can help. And it's a great activity for two people to work on together. And I will say that out of all of the systems we've had, I find this one goes the fastest. The act of actually having to pair the socks, it really goes fast. I know it might seem like a mountain of socks. How can that possibly go fast? But again, you're categorizing, you're breaking them down, you're working on them just one little bit at a time. And so you don't lose your momentum. You just keep going until it's done and then you're like, "Oh, wow, that was easy." Which doesn't happen with a whole lot of things. So, I know you might think that 10 steps can feel like, "Oh my gosh, whoa, way too complicated," but I really encourage you to give this a try if socks are at all a stress in your home. If you have any questions about how all this works, feel free to leave a comment, leave a question here. You can always shoot me an email, Jennifer Roskamp at The Intentional Mom, because hey, that's me. So that's what I had for you today. I would love to know how this works for you. We'll talk again soon. Okay, so socks, they actually aren't the worst thing in the world anymore. So if socks are stressful, or if you have any stress in your home at all, and then you are just who the next episode is for. So I'll be sharing how you can find more peace and more calm in your home. Seem impossible? Well, from a mom of 9 kids, I'm spilling the secrets on the next episode of the Intentional Mom podcast. We'll talk then.